Welcome to our lesson about Autodesk Inventor libraries. There's a lot of functionality regarding the libraries in Inventor. This lesson won't be exhaustive. I'm going to show you how the library system works in Inventor and how to create your own. In Inventor and in other major 3D modelers like SolidWorks, CATIA, etc., reusable, standardized parts are stored separately from your design work. Most organizations have either created or purchased a collection of part and assembly files that are commonly used in design. For example, fasteners, electrical components, pneumatic components, etc. Library files can be stored locally, on a network or shared drive, or, for example, in Vault. Libraries of files are typically very large in size, sometimes containing millions of parts and assemblies and gigabytes of data. The shared library of standard part and assembly files is generally static, meaning it's read-only. You don't save local data or edits there. Rather, you create a local custom library in your workspace that you publish revisions to. You can also copy standard read-only parts and features to your custom local library. You can share your custom library with others if required. We're back in the project editor. Autodesk comes with huge built-in libraries of standard parts and features. This is called the Content Center. We talk more about this in our next lesson on the Content Center. You can copy parts, sections, or whole libraries from the Content Center to your local custom library. And you do that if you want to simplify one of the standard libraries, for example, to display essential components. We define which libraries are available to a project at the time of project creation. You can designate additional folders as library files in the project editor by adding a path to the folder in the Libraries branch. Let's click the plus symbol to add a path. Be sure your library has a unique and descriptive name and isn't nested within another library. Inventor will prompt you if that's the case. Some protocol for working with libraries in Inventor. In Vault, library folders have to be located directly from the root of the Vault. Library folders need to be separate from your design and project data. Normal folders that contain your design and project files shouldn't be located under a library folder. By the way, if you're adding libraries to Vault, you should work with Autodesk Inventor's utility for this, AutoLoader. Now let's talk about how to configure your local custom library. In your local library, you can modify Content Center or other library parts. You don't change the original files within those libraries. They remain read-only. Instead, you make a copy into your library that you modify. Let's click on Configure Content Center. The Configure Libraries window opens. Let's create a new library. Click the Create Library icon. The Create Library window opens. Let's enter a display name. Let's say screws, and we'll accept the same name as our file name. And let's click OK. Let's scroll down to find my new library. Here it is, screws. Note that the icon shows it to be unlocked. That means it's a read-write library rather than a read-only library. And it's also checked in use. To remove a library, just right-click on it and select Delete Library. Let's click OK to accept our changes. We're back in the project editor. Let's click Save. Inventor processes my request. And now let's click Done to close the project editor. Let's close this open file. I won't be able to make any changes to the project paths while I've got a file open. Now that all seemed too easy. Where the heck is that library I just created? As you recall, I only entered a display name and a file name, but no location. You'll remember from our previous lesson on projects, we can display the location of the libraries via the Configure Content Center Libraries tool. Let's select our library from the list of available libraries. The relative path to the Libraries folder displays up above. Let's click on it to launch the Windows Explorer folder where the libraries are contained. Down at the bottom is my new library, named just as I'd specified, screws.idcl. Let's close Windows Explorer, and let's cancel out of the Configure Libraries dialog window. Before we can use that library, we're going to need to map it here under Libraries. Let's right-click and select Add Path. Let's give the library a name. I'll call it Screws. And now let's browse for it. It was on the C drive. Let's expand Computer, select C drive, Program Data, AutoDesk, Inventor 2011, Content Center, Libraries. Let's click OK. Notice that we don't map to the exact file, we just map to the folder where it's stored. Now we've got a local read-write library. We're able to copy a complete library or parts of it to our local library. Let's go to the Tools tab now. Content Center panel, click on Editor. And the Content Center editor opens. Let's resize it so it fits into my recording screen. In Inventor, we can use the Content Center editor as our interface to pull data from the Content Center into our local libraries where we can make changes to the files. On the left, we've got a tree browser of the library view that's selected from this drop-down menu. Let's use the ANSI standard, the American National Standards Institute. If you don't see this tree browser on the left, try clicking on the tree view icon to make sure that the tree browser is active. Notice how the branches and the parts that display are transparent. That's Inventor's way of letting us know that these parts don't really exist yet. They exist currently as specifications within a database table. The selections won't be transparent once they're pulled into your local library. Going to filter for the ISO standard. Let me bring in a couple fasteners. To navigate to my desired parts, I can expand the branches of the tree browser, or I can double-click on the item on the right-hand side of the window. Let me take one of the set screws. Right-click on the item that you want to copy, select Copy To, and choose the library that you'd like to copy the file into. Inventor processes our request. Copying parts does take quite a bit of time, so take only what you need if possible. You can also use the Copy To command on the toolbar right here. When you right-click, if your new library is not available here, it means you need to map the library in your active project as we described earlier in this lesson. You can change the view in the right-hand panel with this toggle. Currently, we're displaying thumbnails. Here's a list, and here's a detail list. Let's restore thumbnails. Let's click Done to close the Content Center editor. This concludes our lesson about libraries.